Welcome to another podcast that I've been able to throw together.
Okay.
Welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
So you kind of came into this a little bit blind. So
I did.
You haven't watched any of the episodes or listened to them or anything?
I have not.
Well, it's real simple. I'll ask you some fun questions, and then you answer them in your own style.
Okay.
So nothing more or complex than that.
Okay.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm a little hoarse for some reason. So if I drink a lot of water, that's why. So
All right.
I'm working on my sexy podcast voice. That's what it is.
Okay. All right.
So John, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know we have a little bit of a background.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, though, really.
Well, true, but we have a little bit of a background, more so involving an alma mater of mine, and which is Baylor University.
Absolutely,
that's where I eventually graduated from. And then your daughter went there, right?
That's where my money went.
That's where your money went. Okay.
That's where my money went, right? So she graduated in 15. So she was there 11 to 15, and spent a lot of time going back and forth to see her and spend time with her. Went to some football games because she worked for the football team. So
she did.
She did.
All right.
Football.
Was she there with RG3?
That was her freshman year.
Okay.
So she actually had a chance to hold the Heisman. And
did she?
She did. And when we went, I tried to hold the Heisman. She's like, nah,
you're not qualified.
Yeah,
Dad.
you can't hold this, Dad. I was like, man, I'm like that, but my money's going here. She said, I know, but I'm a part of the football team. So
that's awesome. So what did she do for?
So she graduated with a degree in early childhood and family studies.
Okay.
Because one of the things was she was just walking around in the community in Waco and just seeing that kids really didn't have a voice. And she really hasn't continued in that, even though she graduated, in that degree. But it kind of helped her because she went into the tech field after graduation, which is kind of funny, So she did, early childhood and family studies, but then went into a tech. She said, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, everything you learned in this, in this field is going to help you deal with the people that you deal with in the tech business.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's talking, it's understanding personalities, and when someone is having issues with their computer and they're just going crazy, you can help them, you calm them down, and get them on the right track with their computer. So
is she pretty tech savvy? Is she?
Yeah, kind of, but it was really one of those things that she kind of fell into. She worked her way up in the company.
Okay.
So now she kind of took a pause to be a mom. So I have a grandson, and so she kind of took a pause from working right now just to be a stay-at-home mom. And
how old's your grandkid?
2 years.
2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
Is this your first grandkid?
My first. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what's your nickname?
Papa.
Papa?
Yeah, Papa. So whenever he calls, so whenever my wife calls, first thing is, Papa, I want to talk to Papa. So I was like, okay, this is going to work.
So you're Papa, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Are you spoiling that kid?
I am. So
is it different how you treat him versus how you treated your daughter? Yeah.
Yes. Because I can spoil him, and then it's time to go home. So we watch F1, or we watch cycling or whatever, and I told her, oh, he's gonna get a bike, and he's gonna get a go-kart, he's gonna get something, he's gonna be all boy.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and she rolled her eyes. I'm like, hey, when he comes to see me, those are my rules. When I come to see you at your house, those are your rules. So
nice.
We'll do what I say at my house, and when we get to your house, say, your rules are your rules. So
well, that's gotta be really fun. Do you feel like there's some things you as Papa can spend time and teach your grandson?
I think there are, right. I think, like with my daughter, so I ran track in high school and college, and so did my wife. My daughter.
Is that how y'all met?
No, so my wife and I, we met in the Army.
Oh, okay.
So well, that's a long story.
Well, sorry.
Maybe for another time.
I was throwing you off track.
No, you did. But so we met in the Army, and that's one of the things my daughter said. I'm going to do things that you guys didn't do. So she played soccer and swam and, did cheerleading.
Okay.
And so because it was one of those things where, if we coached her, then it would be, she would be doing what we wanted her to do versus whatever it was that made her happy.
Right.
So because she didn't go into track and field or, did what my wife and I did, then, she kind of, laid her own foundation, lived her own life on, on the sporting side, and, it was all good. So no issues.
Yeah. So, I can't remember the original question. I get caught up in.
So is it easier to do things with it? It is. I mean, so he's only 2. So, we get away with some things, right? So, he's like a magnet. Whenever we're around him, if we move, he moves. We're talking, he's right there. And so you kind of be, as a parent, and a grandparent, you got to be careful about what you say because, children are very impressionable.
Yeah.
He's like a parakeet. Whatever you say,
he's gonna say.
Oh, he responds right off the bat, right? And his vocabulary is out of this world. So we're very, cautious about what we say. He doesn't watch a lot of TV.
That's good.
A lot of reading and a lot of music. Yeah.
Especially in this day and age with I see so many little kids. The parents shut them up with just an iPad.
Right.
And it's just like, eesh.
Yeah, not my daughter and my son-in-law.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. That's not happening.
Then it sounds like, so your daughter with all the things that she's been involved in, and then you with what I know, and I assume your spouse is pretty active, so very, very, very active lifestyle growing up with your family. What motivates you to be constantly on the move?
I think I've been on the move all my life, right? My wife sometimes get mad because I can't sit still, right? It's kind of hard to, sit down and, watch a show without, I don't know, maybe doing some push-ups or something.
Really? You just like commercial break push? Well, I guess they don't do commercial breaks.
Well, here's the
wonderful world of streaming these days.
Exactly. But here's the crazy thing, right? So, and it sounds kind of crazy, but it's real. I'll walk in my house, right? So if the weather,
the people call that pacing, John.
No, walking.
You walk,
right? So, I have walked 5 miles
in your house
in a circle. 5 miles. It took me, I don't know, about an hour.
How big is your house?
Not very big, but I've walked 5 miles in my house.
Like on just a random day, you're like, I'm gonna wake up and turn my house into a walking gym.
So it was an evening. Oh, I've done it a couple of times, but just a couple of days ago, I hadn't closed my rings on my watch, so I was like, I need to walk.
You're one of those.
Yes.
You train to get the little digital medal sometimes.
I do.
Okay.
100%. And that's the great thing. So my wife does it. My daughter does it. So it's not really a competition, but if I don't close my rings or she doesn't close her rings or, my wife is not closing her rings, then, that text message is coming out.
John, if you throw a few more curse words out, you know who you're sounding like.
I won't be that guy.
You won't be.
I won't be that guy.
Is it Scoggins is his last name?
Yeah.
What's his first name?
Oh wait, hold on. Oh man, caught me off guard. David Goggins. Goggins.
Goggins. Okay.
Yeah.
You can see how much I'm
with
no
curse words. No curse words.
That, because I mean, he's the type of guy who's like, go, no excuses, nonstop. Let's do this. And of course, he drops the F-bomb every chance he gets.
No F-bombs.
No F-bombs. That's
F-bombs.
Good. That's good for the little grandson not to hear. So.
Yeah, because you never know. He's around. He's always listening. So
So why have you always been so active like that?
So I spent, 31 years in the Army.
Wow.
And so
you're retired then?
I'm retired from the Army, but I'm still working.
Okay.
So while I was in the Army, especially in a leadership position, your soldiers are always trying to outdo you. They're trying to one up you, right? So, whenever we do a physical fitness test, they're always trying to score, higher than the leadership,
Right.
for the most part.
Okay.
And so, I would, in between commercials or, in between watching the show, whatever, I would be doing, push-ups or sit-ups. On the weekend, I would go running, just so that, I could be competitive with my soldiers. Kind of hard to lead from the front, if you're a couch potato.
Right.
So it just kind of stuck with me. Plus, I think fitness is one of those things that helps you over the long run. You got to be careful. Obviously, you can't overtrain, overdo it. But I think fitness is one of those kind of things that, if done right, will possibly extend the life. And it's kind of fun.
What's your favorite form of fitness?
Cycling.
Has that always been, or has that just appeared recently?
It goes back to my BMX days. So in the 70s, my younger brother and I, we raced BMX. We did the sidecar. We had, we did all of that.
Do you recall your BMX bike you had back then?
So I had a G-Boy.
Okay.
And race a G-Boy and a red line back in the day.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then after that, I got a Centurion Ironman that I used to ride back in the day. And so I did that up until I joined the Army back in '88. Once I joined the Army,
Centurion, that was a road bike.
It was.
Yeah.
So
what color was it? Was it
was
white?
Silver. Silver and white.
Gotcha.
And it was pretty good, but then I joined the Army in 1988 and cycling just went downhill from there.
Gotcha. All right. So one of the things on this podcast that I tend to always try to ask my guests is, do you recall when you first learned how to ride a bicycle? So bringing up the little red line and G-Boy, that's probably pretty close to learning. Did you have a parent or maybe a papa teach you?
Yeah. So I remember, my dad, bought me and my brother's bikes. And I was probably 6, 7 years old when I got my first bike. But here's a fun fact.
All right.
I was the wheelie king in my neighborhood. So I could ride a wheelie like nobody's business. Not only could I ride a wheelie, but I could also ride a unicycle.
Wow. Can you still ride
I still can ride a unicycle.
Can you ride a wheelie?
I can still ride a wheelie.
All right.
I can still ride a wheelie.
We might have to get you out here.
Absolutely.
On a Wednesday night ride. And give you a bike to show off
100%.
On. Okay.
And growing up, doing BMX. So it was, we used to jump. We jump bikes, right? So we stack up either trash cans or
make your own ramp.
Toolbox, make your own ramp. Wouldn't worry about where you landed, but you just worried about where you were taking off at. So, and then those things just kind of, worked out into BMX. So I started doing that. Then BMX came around the corner, the opportunity to do that. So I jumped on that, and the rest, as they say, is history. But, once I joined the Army, cycling just kind of faded,
Dissipated. Why is that? Just obligations, time?
Different obligations, right? So it was more, and I think it was really my fault that I didn't, keep it up the way I should have kept it up. When my first duty station was Germany, right? So, I left my bike in storage, and I didn't think about getting a bike, because in the Army, we did a lot of running.
Yeah.
So my spare time was either running or ruck marching. And it wasn't until about the time that I got ready to retire that I picked it up. So 31 years had gone by, and then it was time to get started again.
How long did you, with the Army, jump from certain bases?
So
detainments or
Yeah, so deployments.
deployments. That's the word I'm looking.
So my
You can
first,
tell I'm not in the Army and never have been.
so my
Detainments.
first duty station was Germany, and I was there from 88 to 90, and then we call it PCS, Permanent Change of Station, to Fort Hood, Texas. And I was there in Fort Hood. I went to Desert Storm, Desert Shield from Fort Hood.
Oh, really? Okay.
I did. And I was there from 90 to 94.
Do you know that's my old stomping grounds?
Fort Hood?
Area, yeah. I grew up in
Coppers Cove.
Belton, Texas.
Belton, yeah. Absolutely, 100%.
Yep.
So another fun fact, my wife graduated undergrad at UMHB, University of Maryland.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with UMHB. My dad used to work there.
Yeah.
So that is hilarious.
100%.
Yeah.
So she graduated UMHB and then, went to grad school at OU. That's why my money was tied up in the Big 12.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
And so after Fort Hood, in between Fort Hood, so like I said, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and then I PCS to Korea, and I was in Korea for 15 months. Came back to Fort Hood and was there for about 2 years, and then went on recruiting. And I was in recruiting in Columbus, Ohio for 3 years.
Okay.
And then went back to Fort Hood again. There's something about being at Fort Hood.
So in all your deployments, not detainments, did you notice the cycling scene in different various places?
I did.
Alter and be different?
I did. So I would tell you, Germans a lot, they ride bikes a lot. And so I was just in Germany last year. And so it had been probably, so I was in Germany from 2002 to 2011 when my daughter got ready to go to Baylor. They rode pretty nice bikes, but it wasn't until I went back last summer that I saw the cycling scene explode. There were a lot of e-bikes, a lot of high quality bikes that I didn't see when I was there in the early 80s. I think in the early 80s, there were steel frames and, mom and pop looking bikes. This time going back, it were more e-bikes.
Yeah, there's been a huge explosion in tech since
100%.
then. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how far. I mean, just look at like cell phone technology. You know, back in 2000 and
flip phone.
Yeah, you had your flip phone.
Right.
You had your Nokia.
Well, you could barely afford that. Yeah. Right? You could barely.
But tech was only so good, and then we're now with this day and age of so many abilities to improve on the tech that we already have, and especially CAD design and everything going into it. It's just like bikes are amazingly, and as simple as they are, becoming more and more complex and simple at the same time.
Well, I think they become more readily available too. Like, so last summer, I think they were felt. I think it was felt that I saw, and expensive.
Oh, right? Yeah.
But clean, smooth lines.
Yeah.
Everything was fly by wire, no cable sticking out. Everything was, it was just out of control. But it was good to see that, right? I didn't cycle while I was there, working. Did a lot more walking than anything, but, always passed by cyclists and they were, riding, Trek, Specialized, everything that we see here was there, because cycling in Europe is, I think, a lot more.
Yeah.
I think it's, we do a lot of cycling in the States, but I think there's just something about Europe, right? Their cycling scene just seems so much different.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes if it's more or less because everything's a little bit more compact. You're not riding your bike 25 miles to the next town. You're riding your bike a couple of miles to the next town.
Well, that's one thing that I noticed, right? Just talking to people over there.
We're so spread out here.
But there too, right? So, people, they had actual trails that would go from town to town.
Mhm.
Like one of my work partners and I walked, 11 miles from one town to the next. And so people would
Just
cycle.
dedicated bike
They
path.
have dedicated bike paths. And that's one thing that they had in Europe that I think across the states, we lack is a dedicated, walking or bike path, right? So we have our greenways,
Yeah.
but their greenway is a path from, you know, Nuremberg to, Ansbach, 30 click away. You could ride your bike from, one town to the next town.
Yeah.
Whereas here, you're on the street, and there's very few, especially in our environment here, there are very few places where you can, ride your bike without worrying about whether or not you're going to get,
Yeah, that's a
hit
real
by a car.
That's a real problem. And they're working on things like that. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Singing River Trail,
Right.
but that's they're trying to connect a few in North Alabama, a few cities together where you can just keep riding from one city to the next. I think they're trying to connect pretty much Scottsboro to Huntsville to Decatur and Athens.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
So if they do that and get that completed, that'll be a major cycling kind of I guess pathway that will be
Right.
greatly used. So
Well, it's almost like, Silver Comet in Chief Ladega,
yeah,
right? That goes from, Anniston to Smyrna.
yeah,
95 miles. And it's, other than a couple cross streets, it's nothing but riding. And every now and then you got to play Frogger and,
Yeah.
dodge somebody on a skateboard or, or
which I'd rather do that than
dodging cars.
Dodging cars.
Absolutely.
You have any goals of like riding across the United States or anything?
One of my goals is to ride my bike in all 50 states.
Yeah.
I would like to do that.
How many you got checked off?
I think probably about 8 or 9 states. So, obviously Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. Let me see. Working on Texas.
You haven't ridden your bike in Texas?
Have not.
As long as you've been in Texas, you've never.
I have not.
Killing me, Smalls.
I have not. And I think that's really looking at the opportunities to do different rides. I'm not so much concerned about racing.
Yeah.
As much as just going out and doing different rides and meeting folks.
So is your goal not just to like, hey, I'm hopping on my bike and I'm riding 5 miles. You want to ride an event in each state.
I'd like to.
Okay.
Now, if it got to the point where all I can do is just ride, then I'll take that. I want my Strava to be really international because I had opportunity to ride while I was in Korea, right? So last summer,
you got some Strava rides in Korea?
I did.
Okay.
I got a couple. A friend of mine let me loan a bike, so I took my helmet and my shoes and I did. I clipped in, and I tell you, the cycling scene in Korea is really nice.
Yeah,
it really is. So Korea, what I didn't know until I met an older Korean gentleman at a bike shop, was that Korea modeled their cycling scene after Germany's cycling scene.
Yeah, I think there's a thing where you can go and get, if I'm not mistaken, almost like a, it's a
passport.
It's passport.
100%.
And you can ride up and down a certain trail system, pathway system, and then you can get your passport stamped at
100%
different stations.
So if I'm not mistaken, there's like maybe 600K worth of trails in Korea. You could ride from Seoul all the way down to the coast. And I've had some friends that completed that. But if you ride all the trails in Korea, and you can show that you've done them all, then the Korean government gives you a gold medal.
Oh.
So that, to me, that's incentive in itself, right? That's just to show. And then the other thing too that they have out there is they have, and this was awesome. So I was riding one Sunday and I came around the corner and it was a bike shop right there on the trail. I mean, bike shop wide open.
Okay.
And they had a Korean gentleman out there tuning up bikes, washing bikes because it had rained, so there was some mud on the trail. There were probably 50 Koreans out there, male and female, nice bikes, obviously dressed to the nine.
Yeah.
Drinking, water or eating whatever, and then they got on their bikes and then they moved out. But this bike, the bike shop was right there. I had never seen a bike shop
right there on
the trail. I mean, you just pull off right there, and it was pretty awesome. So I went in there and talked to the owner of the bike shop, and they didn't really have a lot of bikes in there, but it was really
more a repair shop.
It was repair and it was clothing.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yep.
And the Koreans have some pretty nice bike shops. They have some pretty nice bike shops over there. So
I've noticed with a lot of Asian apparel, you got to get like triple XL to fit you. Is that?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Don't ever buy like size large from
no
from an Asian
no. I think
cycling market.
It's almost like the European cut.
Yeah.
Right. You can't go in there and buy a medium and think that you're gonna put that European cut on there,
right?
Because it's maybe if you're real slim, you could get away with it, but the average rider won't get away with it.
Speaking of bike rides, let's take a look at this one right here. So, tell me about this little picture right here. This is I know a little bit about it, but.
So this was a couple of weeks ago, the Selma to Montgomery ride. This was actually my second time doing this ride.
Okay.
And this right here, these are some of my teammates, 4 of my teammates from Major Taylor, Alabama. So you have Birmingham represented, and then 2 from Huntsville represented. And so what they did was they pushed us out in groups. There were about 500 riders at that ride.
What's the ride called?
Selma to Montgomery. So
Selma to Montgomery. Okay.
It was the 60th anniversary of the March on.
Oh, really?
The March on Montgomery, right?
60 years has passed.
60 years, right? And so, as a matter of fact, they were supposed to do another one this past weekend, but because of the storm, they didn't. Now there were some folks that came in from out of town that actually rode before the storms hit Montgomery and Selma. But this particular picture right here. They let me lead, the group off the bridge. So
that's awesome.
They rode us up, and then they stopped us right underneath the Edmund Pettis sign.
Yeah.
And then they pushed us down the hill. Now we obviously didn't take off right off the bat. We had ankle monitors on, so we had to coast down the hill so that it caught the signal.
Right.
So that way they can track you from start to finish, and then when you got to the finish line, which was at the stairs of the Capitol, the state Capitol. Then they collected up your ankle bracelet. If you look at my right ankle, you can see everyone has
it.
That has the bracelet on there.
That's pretty awesome. What? I would assume you're riding kind of on almost what road are you riding on?
It was whatever I'm not sure, I can't remember what the highway, but it's a 4-lane, so 2 on each side.
I think that's awesome that they have the ankle monitors then, because or the chips, because that safety
100%.
Yeah, and especially if you're riding on the highway, then you want, there's cars passing by on that, I'm sure, and not knowing what's going on.
So it's a little bit different this year, but 2 years ago when I rode the ride, I don't remember a car ever breaking into the right-hand lane, right? And so here, we have both sides of the bridge.
Gotcha.
So they would bring 28 people up, so 14 on each side, and then you would go in waves. So all 500 didn't take off at the same time. So the fastest people, took off first.
Gotcha.
And we ended up catching the majority of them. And so it was very well
organized.
It was
planned,
very well organized. And so
systematic.
we had, I think there were rest stops like every 10 miles there were rest stops. And so we all of us pretty much stayed together.
That's great.
Through the whole ride.
Now I'm zoom in on you a little bit because you're wearing the MTCC jersey right here.
So this is our after ride. So after you finish a ride and you're just relaxing, then this is the shirt that we all wear.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
Post ride jersey.
It's a post ride jersey, absolutely. So we have a couple of different shirts. So we have a polo that like whenever I travel from home to go on business or whatever, I'll wear that because obviously I want people to see it.
Let's kind of revert back just a hair because I'm sure a lot of people are a little bit confused, especially if they're listening. So what you're wearing is the Major Taylor Cycling Club.
That's correct.
Jersey.
Yes.
So maybe for people who are just uneducated and don't know who Major Taylor is, can you give maybe a brief synopsis of Major Taylor and then your involvement in this particular chapter?
Okay. So Major Taylor was a black cyclist who grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. He worked in a bike shop and was very good at what he did.
Now, also, when was this?
So this was the late 1800s.
Yep.
So somewhere around 1887 to about 1889, all the way up through 19. I think I want to say his last real competitive rides were somewhere around 1904-ish time frame. So 1899. And you'll see a lot of our apparel has 1899 because that's when he was world champ, right? And so he was world champ at a couple different distances, right? So from the quarter mile all the way up to the 2 mile, he was world champ. And this is at a time where it was not popular for people of color to to be involved in sporting events, especially cycling, right? Which goes back to our early conversation about, cycling in Europe.
Right.
Right. So he moved to Massachusetts, Worcester, if I pronounce that correctly.
You got to say it with an accent to get it right.
Go ahead, let me hear you.
I'm just kidding. I don't know how to say it either.
Right. So and so he still worked in the bike shop. And then that's when he was really introduced to the racing, competitive racing. And as we say, the rest was history. So 1899 is, if you look at any of the Major Taylor clubs, the original Major Taylor Club is in Columbus, Ohio. Mm-hmm. But there are, clubs in obviously Alabama and a few in Texas, Georgia. I mean, they're everywhere pretty much. California. As a matter of fact, the ride that we did, they came as far as California. Major Taylor, LA came out and did the ride.
Well, here's a thing that I kind of almost want to. We're gonna go back to this, and then this picture right here. So this is kind of a neat thing because you're wearing your Major Taylor jersey right behind a mural of Willie Mays.
That's to say, hey kid.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So often referred in the United States, Willie Mays is the guy who broke, racial barriers to play sports.
Yes. Baseball
in particular. But it's rare that people ever bring up Major Taylor. And I think he was the OG before Willie Mays
100%
to break the racial barrier and compete
before anybody.
So what is, seeing this picture, I pulled this off of your Strava account and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. What does, riding bikes mean to you as a person of color?
So, one, this was an opportunity, right? So I did a ride with, our crew that lives in Birmingham. And right as we were finishing, they said, we got to take you past the mural. And so when I saw that mural, I was just awestruck because if you remember last year, I think it was last year, they played at the Birmingham Barons Stadium. The Major League Baseball, they fixed up the stadium, and so they played there. And as a matter of fact, when we did this ride, we rode by the Birmingham Barons Stadium.
Oh, okay.
And so he played for Birmingham Barons, right? So we went out to there, and while we were there, they were having a HBCU baseball classic.
Oh, okay.
So when I saw this, I was like, man, I have to get this picture. But I think for me, it's really an opportunity. One, I'm on Strava, and two, when I'm out cycling, I have an opportunity to, as the picture showed, to see different things and meet different people. And I think it's important, right? Because one, we talked, about my grandson. I want my grandson to see that it is cool to ride a bike, right? It's okay because you'll meet, I meet a whole bunch of different people from all different classes, all different races, all different ethnicity. And what we have in common is the love for cycling and the love for, fellowship and friendship and fitness, right? And there's that competitive edge in there, and it should be, right? It should be. And, everyone is, every club talks a little smack. But at the end of the day, when the race is done or when the ride is done, we get together, we break bread, and, we start planning, hey, where are we going to meet again? Where's the next ride at? Or if you meet someone new, hey, are you on Strava? Hey, I'd like to see where you ride, and so I've had the opportunity to meet people that I follow on Strava. They're like, hey, you're that guy that says, these miles are not going to ride themselves. And I say that so that, you're not sitting on the couch, right? Because every mile counts, whether you're out riding, 10 miles or 100 miles, you got to get out there and do it. And then plus you meet people that you would normally not meet if you were sitting in the house.
Is it, I want to be careful with how I pose this question. But do you ever get frustrated by riding your bike in a particular area due to things like
racial biases?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do. There are some areas, here in Huntsville, and on the outskirts where, people ride a little bit close to you, and they have a tendency to, give you the salute.
Yeah.
Or, just get so close to you that you just get nervous about cycling. It's scary because we've lost, friends cycling, just because of, whether it's, drunk driving, which is, should be a no-go, but just not giving us the 3 feet. We've been on rides together where people have passed us,
too close
for comfort. And, one slip, if you hit one rock and it, pushes you into traffic, we try to obey we obey the laws. We take the road when it's ours, but we obey the laws. But, people just don't, give you that respect. And, there are times when I'm out, cycling by myself that I'm pretty nervous, and my wife has a tendency to, follow me on Strava so she knows where I'm at.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll give you for an example. I was coming out of my neighborhood one day, right there where we do Jetplex at. So Beetle and Waltrana.
Yeah. So
I come out of my neighborhood and I throw my arm out to the left to say, hey, I'm going left. And I looked all the way down the block, probably about, all the way at the bottom towards Zerk, I saw a truck. So as I crested the hill to go down and I threw my arm to the right to say, I'm turning on Waltriana, the sign says bikes may use the full lane. So this guy in a truck, a flatbed 18-wheel truck, was so close to me that I felt his mirror almost hit me.
Gotcha.
And so, unfortunately, I got a little bit heated.
Yeah.
And
I've been there.
I gave him the salute, and he slammed on the brakes. And I rode up next to him, and I said, "The law says the road is mine." I said, "You can see that sign right there. It's 50 feet in front of you. It says that I can use the whole lane." And he said, "Well, it's this." I'm like, "That's the emergency exit." I said, "Do you see that steel bar in the emergency lane? If I hit that on my bike, I'm destroyed. My bike is destroyed." And he said, "Well, I'm going to call the cops." And he did. He called the police. And, unfortunately, I stood there for, 35 or 40 minutes until 3 cop cars came.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a white driver.
Yeah.
So 3 cop cars came, and one of them had a ride along. And so they came up and, "Do you have ID?" "I do." So I gave them my ID, and they asked what happened. And I don't know what he told 911 when he called 911. But I told him, I said, "Hey, this guy was too close. He didn't give me my 3 feet. I signaled that I was going to the right, and he rode up on me and got real close, and I felt like I was in danger." So I told him, I said, "Hey, this is what I need everybody to do. I need you all to turn around." And I pointed to Zaius' cross. And I said, that was one of my partners right there who got hit by a drunk driver at 6:50 in the evening. It was still daylight outside. And at that time, the guy had not even gone to court for doing what he did. And I said, plus that sign right there says that I can use the entire lane. And the one on the other side of the road, it says share the road.
Yeah.
And so what the cop told him was, he said, "If you think this is crazy, wait till it warms up. You're going to see about 100 or 120 cyclists on this particular road. So you might as well just go ahead and get used to it." So he was like, "Hey, do you," he asked the cyclist, or he asked me, "Do you want to press charges?" So he looked at the truck driver and said, "Do you want to press charges?" And the guy was like, "No." So he's like, "Okay, we're good." So as the police drove off, I told the guy, I said, "Look, I live 0.6 from here. And my wife is concerned about me every time I ride in my neighborhood." I said, "I could go on Redstone Arsenal and ride, but why do I have to go on Redstone Arsenal with all these nice roads out here? If I obey the law and you obey the law, we should be able to share the road." Now, I don't ride in the middle of the street.
Right.
I stay as close to the white line as I possibly can without getting into the debris field, right? Because there's a debris field, there's a minefield out there, right? And so at that point, he understood, because he was hot.
So that's an amazing story, number one. But it makes me think of all the things. Number one, I'm heated in that moment.
Right.
As a cyclist. And I want to, give it to that guy. The way you told that story, it seemed like you kept a pretty cool head.
Well, because I never know if I'm going to see this guy again. And I don't, it's unfortunate. And, we talk about this even when driving a car, right? You just don't know what the other person is going through. You don't know what's on their mind, right? And maybe he knows the law, maybe he doesn't know the law. So maybe there's a little education, that needs to happen. And I told him, I said, all these roads right here, we ride all these roads. And there are places on these roads, especially when you go across towards Swancott, that there is no shoulder.
Right.
The road is ours, right? But we don't forcibly take the road because we respect the road and we want to continue to ride on the road, but we need them to be just as conscious about us as we are about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think at that point, he understood where I was coming from. So
do you think, whether it be, cars or traffic, and then definitely race, one thing that I'd love it when I see more African Americans on the bicycle, but I feel like sometimes that's a sport not many get into. Do you think there's a reason for that? Whether it's traffic, whether it's, racial issues, what do you think it is?
I would say D, all of the above.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I got involved with Major Taylor, right? Was not just because he was, a man of color, but because of what he stood for, because he wanted to break the color barrier because he had a
Mhm.
skill that he wanted the world to see, right? And so, by joining, Major Taylor, so I am the, district chairperson for the Huntsville chapter of the
Yeah.
Alabama Major Taylor Cycling Club, and so we have, teams in our districts in, Huntsville, Birmingham. Our president lives in Tuscaloosa.
How many in your chapter in this area? Do you know?
There's a few of us. There
Okay.
could be more, but there's a few of us. And I would tell you, there was a comment made a few years ago that, Huntsville doesn't need any more cycling clubs. I'm just gonna throw that out there, and maybe the person might hear this, but and
Do you have, can I join?
yes, you can.
Oh, I
Yes, you
need to
can.
join then.
Absolutely, 100%. So
What do I got to do to join?
I think it costs us like $25 a year, and that's an insurance thing, right?
Yeah.
So we pay for insurance, and that's it. And so after we get done here, I'll share the link with you,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you can
And
join.
for the when we post this, I'll have that, and maybe we can bump up your numbers, man.
Well, 100%, and that's the thing, it's not a minority thing. It's not a black thing. We are about fitness. We're about cycling. We're about fellowship. We like to just get out and ride, and we like to have a great time when we ride. And I think that's the misconception.
Why wouldn't anybody want to join that?
I don't know. It's, well, because one, people aren't educated enough to know. People don't know, right? People see me wearing the kit.
Yeah.
And some know, and then some don't know. Like who's Major Taylor? And you give them a brief synopsis, and they're like, man, I had no idea.
And if you read his biography and listen to his story, he didn't do it on his own.
Right.
He had a lot of cool players helping him along the way, both of his race and white people.
That's
of
correct.
that time. And during that time and age, that said a lot for somebody to cross that divide to help somebody with his extreme talent, but also being of a different race.
100%. And I think we see it now, where people are looking for talent, right? And they understand that it may cost them something to recognize this talent and help this talent out, right? It may cost them some friends, right? Because the climate right now is not very friendly, right?
Talking about social climate,
yeah. Right? But there are some like us who can, forget all that. This is what we're about. But there are some out there who are having a hard time coming to grips with, what's going on in society. And I really do think cycling is a way to bridge that gap. Sports. I think sports is a way to bridge that gap. It just so happened that, our sport is cycling or running or whatever, right? And then I agree 100%. Cycling is expensive. Yeah. Like I play golf, right? So golf is expensive too, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't see a lot, or in the past you didn't really see a lot because it was so expensive. I would tell you when I, going back to the BMX, there weren't a lot of, folks of color doing BMX unless they had money, and just bikes were expensive. Entry fees were expensive, and you had to get to the races.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like now. Right. To go to a ride, whether it's in this state or other states, you got to have the money. Right. And,
right.
And, you got to have you don't have to have the $30,000 bike. But, at the same time, you probably want to have some kind of, bike that's going to be able to handle.
Something that's
going
to
handle that environment.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's really a financial thing.
What do you think is something that either your club or another club can do to get maybe people who would normally choose cycling as a sport to engage in it?
So, it's crazy because there are a couple different, clubs that are linked in with ours. So the Montgomery Bicycle Club,
Yeah.
right? So Montgomery Bicycle Club, they collect bikes, and then they give those bikes to underprivileged kids to get them into cycling. And so they have some folks that work on the bikes and make sure the bikes are up to code before they give them out. And that's the thing, right? Is trying to pass on that knowledge or pass on that ability to get into a sport or, an event that you normally wouldn't be able to get into.
Yeah.
And I think we try to, get involved in rides that, help out the community, that, provide for, those that are, less fortunate as we are,
Well, you and I have talked about, we have a little Wednesday night sunset cruise, but you and I have talked about trying to host a ride at some point. So, and I think we're going to do it on a weekend or something like that. So we need to nail down a date, and then maybe we can, invite some newcomers. And
well, hopefully after people hear this, right? So we'll nail it down.
We'll go international, baby, with this podcast.
100%. We'll nail it down, and then hopefully we have too many riders. I don't know how many riders are too many riders, but I think the more the merrier.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, here's some of your teammates right here.
Absolutely.
So, I might say you are quite color coordinated. Look at them goggles are matching the kit, and you're looking pretty sharp there.
I'm trying, right? So, the crazy thing is when we ride, especially like when we did the Selma to Montgomery ride, the team will call out and say, hey, we're wearing, X kit.
Yeah.
If you have it, hey, wear this. But, at the end of the day, as long as you wear something that says, Major Taylor on it, then you're good to go.
Yeah, look at that going. Is this the post ride kit, and then this is the actual kit, or is that just a different day?
So that was a different day. That was the actual Selma to Montgomery. That was as we were staging right before we got ready to go over the bridge. You got to
look sharp. I got you.
Yeah, I don't want to say people like to clown, but I like to take pictures, right? So I like to catalog.
Yeah.
When I take pictures, so I like to catalog my rides.
Here's you, man. And that's another Major Taylor kit, right?
It is.
Man, I'm going to join just to wear some of those kits. That looks awesome.
So this was actually on the Arsenal.
Okay.
Down by the dock and the river.
Yeah.
I was out there with Mac. Lorenzo Mack, and I took that. I was like, man, I need to do something a little bit different. So I said, well, okay, as long as my bike stays good, then I'm gonna go ahead and strike this pose and take this picture.
And what you got is that a Specialized Ethos?
It is the Ethos Pro. You should know.
I know.
You should know. I'm
just letting everybody else know what you're cruising on.
She can climb too.
There she is.
Yeah, she is.
That's a great bike.
She can do it. I'll tell you what. So the other bike you sold me, my Specialized Tarmac, I still ride that. It's on my trainer, but it's just something between the bikes. It really is.
It's completely different. Well, you went from I think mechanical to electronic. What'd you think about that?
It took me a minute to get used to it, but once I did. It was, I don't want to say I'll never go back because, never say never.
Never, yeah. But it's going to be hard to go back to.
Well, it's hard when I get on the trainer because the trainer's mechanical.
Right.
But if you know how to use them, then I think both of them are good. Both of them serve different purposes. Because when you click, it's click and forget.
Yeah.
With the mechanical, it was, I had to double click sometime.
You had to think about it a little bit more.
I did. But when I hit it on the electronic, it was shift and forget.
Do you ever think back in your the Rad days?
Yeah.
You remember that movie Rad?
I do.
Anybody who rides BMX always go to that. Do you ever think you'd be riding a bike with electronic shifting or anything like that? Isn't it amazing how bikes
It
have
is.
come?
Well, honestly, I don't think I ever thought I would be riding a bike that I'm riding now.
Oh yeah.
Right. I think it all happened. I was in here one day looking at a bike, and I went home and I mentioned it to my wife, and so she went online and she found it. So the one that she bought me wasn't the one I was looking at,
Yeah.
but I'm glad she got the one that she did. Right. It worked out perfect.
You sounds like if she bought the bike, you have an amazing spouse. So
I do. I do. I can't complain.
yeah.
Probably I don't probably, I don't deserve her, but
You usually we have customers who go like, don't tell my spouse how much this bike costs, please. And all right, we'll
well,
keep it quiet.
she knows how much it costs because she bought it. Right? She
That's
bought
why I'm
it.
saying you have an amazing wife.
I told somebody, I talked to somebody about this last Monday night at Jetplex, and he was like, it all comes out of the same pool of money.
Yeah.
It does. But at the end of the day, it's the thought, right?
Yeah.
It's the, it's
Well, she knows what the bike means to you.
100%.
So-
And that's why it's important. That's why I think it's special, because she doesn't ride, right? So she doesn't ride. She
Gosh,
had
we need to
some,
remedy that, don't we?
well, she has some issues that if she does ride, then, we're going to have to get her something that she can sit on comfortably.
Gotcha. Okay.
Got some back issues and stuff. And I really do want to get her out there and ride. I'll tell you the difference between, not that I didn't have freedom running, but I have more freedom riding because I can go. Now, again, you could trail run and I got it, but man, if I go out and I go for 100-mile ride, I can go a long way. I can go to a couple different cities, right, and see a lot more, and I think be fresher. I can be fresher than I would if I try to go run 100 miles.
I think it's really fun when you can take a vacation and then bring the bike along
100%.
and then find a route that's kind of popular, like on Strava or whatever the apps are, and do that route, whether it's 25 miles or 50 or whatever. And you see things that you would never see if you're just vacationing and you just go to places in your car. You almost get accustomed and very familiar with the town immediately on the bike. Then,
well, and that's the thing that's why I think it's so important, right? So when I go see my daughter, when I went to go see my daughter and her family, I took my bike, and they have ATT, so American Tobacco Trail.
Okay.
It's almost like the Chief Lodega Silver Common. And it's right. I mean, it's probably 5 minutes from her house.
Gotcha.
And so I jumped on it, and I jumped on it early, and it was dark. Good thing I had good lights on my bike.
Yeah.
But it was 22 miles. I rode it the first time just a little bit. Then the next day I went even further. My grandson was playing soccer, so I needed to get back. But the next day I had time, so I got up early and I went out and came across some cyclists, right? And that's the whole thing is you meet different people, and people see you, and 100% when I'm out there, I wear my Major Taylor Alabama gear always.
How many jerseys you got racked up on that?
A Major Taylor, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7 kits.
I think seven.
One for every day of the week, man.
7 kits, right? And every time they create one, so they did one for breast cancer. So I had to get that. We had a teammate that was dealing with some things, so they did that to represent the teammate, and so I had to get that one. You saw the yellow one, the black one, the gray one. I think the gray one is probably
gray looks pretty sharp.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite kits right there. But you can't wear it all the time though, right?
No.
So, and then we have some different ones. We have one that's white and gold, one that is black and gold, and then one is black and white, and then we have a long sleeve one.
So it seems, are their colors kind of black and gold for the?
They are.
Yeah. Okay.
So the crazy thing about it is one of our teammates graduated from Alabama State.
Okay.
So Alabama State's colors are
Green.
black and gold.
Black and gold. Okay.
Black and gold, right? And so, you know, that's our theme, and so I enjoy it. So every time they come out with something new, I'm trying to get it.
Gotcha. Did you answer who taught you how to ride a bike?
My dad.
Your dad?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
I do. Well, I do. I don't. You know, if I think back on it, I don't think it had training wheels on it. I think it was like you took the training wheels off and just pushed.
Kept pushing you.
Yeah, let's go. And so,
do you recall how long it took you?
I don't think it took very long at all, because I eventually started doing wheelies not too long after that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then BMX came in, so I probably rode a bike.
It seems like you are almost a natural athlete then.
I hope so. I'm an older athlete now. I'm a much older athlete now.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, I'm
start graying out.
Yes, well.
If you're training, at least for me, what I start doing now is like, all right, here's my training, here's my recovery. I treat recovery almost like a training.
Well, you have to. You know, sometimes I find myself wanting to ride, you know, too much. I go home and I just want to get on the bike and just go ride. That's really my decompression time from work. Not that work is bad, but man, when it's nice outside, I just want to get on the bike and just, you know, try to get 20 or 30 in before the sun goes down.
That's great.
Doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
But I try to get as much as I can.
What's your go-to is a road bike? You ride anything else? You ever hop on the mountain bike or anything?
I have not. So, you know, I've ridden a mountain bike a couple times, but I've pretty much always owned road bikes. Thought about gravel, but haven't pulled the trigger just yet on that one.
Gravel's fun. In fact, if you like, you know, trying to get, you know, 20 or 30 miles in, and you're just like, I just don't necessarily have the time. Sometimes gravel's a way to go if you're close by a little gravel spot, because you're almost constantly pedaling.
Right. And
I sometimes feel like if you ride 15 miles, it feels like you rode 30.
Right.
Because it's nonstop scooting on usually surfaces that have a little bit more, you know, resistance and friction to them. You're having to get a little bit better of a workout.
Right.
So it's kind of fun. And then if you like those scenes where you're by the water or out in nature,
you know, I do.
You're going to love that then.
You know, I do. Yeah. I'm gonna have to keep that one in mind, because, you know, I started noticing a lot of people switch to gravel, right?
Yeah, and I think some of that has to do with safe places to ride.
100%.
You know, I'd rather face a nasty raccoon or wildebeest than a car. You know,
well, you know, and I think, and this is crazy. So I used to do a lot of riding by the house, but in that area, there's just so much construction. There's so much home building. You know, the growth is just there, or the expansion, and so my safe places are no longer as safe as they used to be, unless I get out there, you know, early in the morning. Now that the time has changed, now I can get out there early. But I find myself riding more on the Arsenal now than I ever did. I used to hate going on the Arsenal, but it really has become a safe haven.
Yeah, the weekends, man, super safe.
100%. I mean, because really in the weekends, the only people you have to worry about are the hunters or the fishers, or, you know, anybody that's, you know, down at the campsites or whatever. But
that's usually few and far between altogether.
It is.
Do you do any multi-sport stuff?
No, so not very good swimmer. Mm-hmm. Average swimmer at best.
You got to get your daughter to teach you some.
Yeah, I know. But these old knees don't They don't work the way they used to. So that's really why I turned to cycling, because it's low impact.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really, take a whole bunch to get on the bike and stay on the bike as much as, the pounding that, 31 years of running in the Army. Not to say that I don't want to run, but I do a lot more walking. I do a lot of walking too.
Yeah.
As you saw my Strava last night, my wife and I went for a walk last night.
That was a beautiful sunset there.
Well, we just had the crazy weather. So, this kind of, the remnants of our stormy weekend. So
yeah, that was nuts. It was, I feel like sometimes it's more hype than.
Well, but you know what? It'll come that day when the hype is real.
The real, yeah.
And so.
I mean, with weather patterns and predictions, we're getting better and better. But sometimes I feel like these meteorologists just go a little hyper and crazy.
I don't know if you remember, and I don't know if this is really the spot, but it was a couple years ago. We had a weatherman, a meteorologist, say that we were going to have this crazy storm come in, and they shut Huntsville down.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happened. The next day, that guy was gone. Gone. I mean, he was gone. I mean, I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 years ago.
Interesting.
But I mean, they shut Huntsville down, and the next day they had somebody else doing the weather. I was like,
they couldn't have possibly left it on the shoulders of one guy to make this prediction.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's like Chicken Little. You can't, scream that the sky's falling.
I'd be curious to find out more about that.
I never really looked back into it, but I know this guy did.
I've often joked, like, being a meteorologist, you could be 100% wrong 100% of the time and still retain a job. Because it's like, this is weather. It's just going to change.
Well, that's something that we kind of did this weekend. We kind of just watched the weather, right? Simply because, it was almost like that perfect storm. I mean, you look at the temperature now, the temperature dropped 20 degrees, almost overnight.
Right.
Because a cold front came in, we had the warm air, and they had, I think they said there were like 16 tornadoes across.
Yeah. And what we know of weather patterns like that, it's the perfect conditions that anything could happen.
100%.
So it's very wise to be alert. And I don't want to disregard anything like that, but it definitely seems like we get a little hyped up a little bit more than we should.
And I just think the people who actually have to deal with the storms, they probably maybe at one time thought that too, until that storm, got up close and personal with them.
It's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's, like I said, that's one of the reasons why they, canceled the ride this weekend.
Yeah.
The second part of, Selma to Montgomery, because of the rain, and, they didn't want, to put the cyclists in harm's way or the volunteers in harm's way, because this time, so when I did it a couple of weeks ago, it was just a bike ride.
Yeah.
This one was a bike and relay, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
2 years ago when I did it, we had some teammates that put together a relay team, and they did a relay over the 51 miles.
Oh, okay.
And there were a lot more people there because there were, relay teams and cyclists. So they pushed the cyclists out first, obviously, and then the runners behind them. They didn't do that this weekend because of the weather, so they've postponed it until next year.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because of the weather.
We should garner some action up for that and build it up and try to get a big crew going down there.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? So here's another one for you, right?
Okay.
Since we're talking about a crew, there are some pretty intense rides around. There's a ride in Houston, Summer Sizzler. There's a ride in Mississippi. There's a couple rides in Oklahoma. So let me digress to Oklahoma, right? So I did. I don't know if you're familiar with Black Wall Street.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's
So that's almost like Selma to Montgomery,
Yeah.
right? So Black Wall Street. So I went up there to support a friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so he is a friend of my brother-in-law's. And so he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna ride this ride." So I'm like, "Cool, I'll sign up. We'll come up, we'll hang out, for the weekend." My brother-in-law they live in Oklahoma, right outside Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And so I signed up for the ride, and I get there, and I had never really, as many times as I've been to Oklahoma, never gone through Tulsa like that. And so I get there, I set up my bike, and it's just the people everywhere. And I mean, it was very well supported.
Yeah.
The rest stops, we went through the Black Wall Street area, and so while I was riding with my friend, so there was a few of us that stayed together. And so he does a East Side ride, and his ride was really the same thing to introduce, I want to say underprivileged, minority
Yeah.
youth, about into cycling and fitness. And so he,
Okay.
he does like a little health fair. And so I was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about creating a Major Taylor team in Oklahoma?" And he was like, "Nah." So we wrote a metric. So the whole metric, and I had
You're just on it.
I was on it the whole time. And so what ended up happening is I turned him on to our president,
Right.
Nate Taylor. And so he called Nate. And so what Oklahoma did was they modeled their Major Taylor team after ours. So they're
sweet.
like our, if you would, they're like our brothers, our cousins. Right. And so
Carbon paste.
they are. So, they followed, our bylaws and everything. And so now there's Oklahoma City, there's Tulsa, and then there's Lawton. So he has, 3 sections of Major Taylor, Oklahoma. But anyway, the Black Wall Street, we went up there, and I had never, I've read about it, I've seen it, and understood it, but never really saw it for myself.
Yeah.
And so after it was over, my wife and I, just like Selma, we rolled back through there, and we just walked around and saw the murals. There's just murals, and there's plaques on the ground, and it, this barbershop, this hotel, this movie theater, this bank, this grocery store. There were placards on the sidewalk where, Black owned businesses were at.
And man, I'm terrible with history and recalling things, but I want to say that the city was burned,
bombed.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
was by the government.
Gotcha. Okay, right. I didn't know it was bombed.
It was. They used airplanes. Well, they burned it down, but they use aircraft to pretty much chase folks out, and so just as a matter of fact, we rode through the area, and they were still trying to unearth remains of folks that were, that had been buried in mass graves. This was a few years ago that I rode the ride. So that's the other thing about cycling is it's the history that you come up against
absolutely.
when you get out of Huntsville and you ride in different different states.
And when I used to live in Waco, and most people know Waco through the Branch Davidians, right?
100%.
There was a few times when I hosted some rides with some people coming in from out of state, and they would ask about Branch Davidians, and I was just like, "You want to take a ride?" And they're like, "You mean drive there?" I was like, "No, we can ride our bikes there." And I would take them on a ride to the compound, and this was years after the fact, and,
right?
When we got there, it was a memorial service or memorial set up for the people who passed, but when we got there, you could walk around, and there, a few of the people that I've took, they were just blown away that you could go to a site like that.
It's real.
Like, yeah, this is real history. This is what really happened. I'm gonna have to study up on Tulsa with that, because I didn't know it was bombing.
It was
for some reason. So
it was. So
that's a tragedy, man.
It is. And the crazy thing about it is when you go through there, it's just like Selma, right?
Yeah.
You can almost feel, and that sounds crazy, but you can almost feel the presence.
Yeah.
That something happened that that something is still happening and growth is coming back, right? Folks are still coming back, but we're at a point right now where we're just trying to erase history,
Yeah.
and we just can't, we can't let that happen. 2 years ago when I did Selma, I met a gentleman and I bypassed him until someone pointed him out to me. But I met a gentleman that walked across with Martin Luther King and John Lewis. They tried to do it a couple of days prior to that, and he got beat across the head with a billy club, and I stood in the steps where Martin Luther King stood on one side and looked across the river and saw the state troopers, and it wasn't until they got across the bridge that they crossed from one county into another county that they encountered what they encountered. But it's that kind of thing. But let me tell you this. So we talk about bike rides. So there is a bike ride in Atlanta called One Love.
Oh yeah.
So One Love is, I can say this, out of control in a good way, right? That's where I met a lot of people, and I just like I did, and I did the Major Taylor Invitational a couple months prior to that. So June of 22, Major Taylor Invitational up in Indianapolis, and that was awesome. But then I went to One Love, so they do like a Thursday meet and greet. They just ride a few miles, they meet at a bar, a pub, or whatever, and then on Thursday they do or Friday they do a fish fry ride. So it's 30 miles. That's awesome. You come back, they do a fish fry, and then Saturday they do a couple different routes. I think it was like 35, 50, a metric, and then they do a
full flavoring for everybody.
Full century, right? And so the team that puts it on is called MAC, so Metro Atlanta Cycling Club. Okay. And their race team, if I'm not mistaken, they did the full century in about 4.5 hours.
Gosh, that's smoking.
And then
Atlanta's not necessarily flat.
No, there were hills out there. Don't let anyone ever tell you that Atlanta's flat, because we were outskirts of Atlanta and there were hills everywhere.
And they got some pitchy climbs.
Yes, and I think I took a beating on that day. And then Sunday we did a quote unquote recovery ride. So it's 44-mile recovery ride.
Well, that's
and it was nothing recovery about
it. Yeah.
So I mean, they had the different groups, A through D. We ran into a little bit of rain, but they were probably pushing, I don't know, maybe 26, 27, 28. They were smoking. But the recovery ride was Monday because it's Labor Day weekend. Okay. They do a Labor Day weekend, so it's 5 days of riding. 5 days of riding and meeting people, and here's the great thing about it is all these rides that I go to. Yeah. There are no issues, right? Nobody's fussing and fighting. There may be some folks that are partaking in some libations, if you will.
That's part of it.
They're not. There are no arguments. Right. And because they understand that if you go out here and show your backside, this is one less ride that we'll have. This is one less activity that we'll have to get together. So people come out there with, one goal in mind, and that's to have fun, fellowship, and eat and ride, and talk a little race trash, and come back and get together.
One of my favorite quotes, Martin Luther King Jr. And I think this goes really into the heart of cycling, and especially with the heart of the Major Taylor Cycling Club, especially trying to get more people to join. But his quote, it really has to do with like how we interact with each other. And it's always stuck with me. It says, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. And we're ever growing and changing and improving. And we're never going to get there until we're both doing the same thing, trying to ever grow and improve.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's where cycling comes in, right? um, I think cycling kind of puts people on even terms.
Oh yeah.
Maybe not, price point wise, but you're there, right? You're out there, you're cycling, you're enjoying the environment. And that's what people are there to do, right? I don't know if you remember, you probably do. I'll leave the page unsaid, but I wrote in a couple posts on the page about some rides,
Mm-hmm.
and someone gave me a hard time about
Mm.
posting these small rides, these 15 or 20-mile
Right. Yeah.
rides, and I had to give him the business, and then I ran into the individual at the all you can eat,
Mm-hmm.
and you know he said my name, I said his name, and that was it. And it was, we kind of discourage people, right? With I think you discourage people with that attitude, because to me, cycling, and that's why I say these miles are not gonna ride themselves, right? If you're sitting on the couch and you're waiting for the kids to come home and you have an hour, then go ride for an hour.
Yeah.
Ride for 45 minutes. Get what you can get. But when we try to typecast people and think that the only way you can enjoy cycling is to go out and ride a century or ride a metric every time you
Yeah.
ride, for people, that's not reality.
Yeah.
Reality is, I have a half an hour, or I have 45 minutes, or I have an hour. Then if you want to ride, do what you can do, right?
Absolutely.
But when when that individual said that, and I came back and asked him, okay, well, you must be the national champ or Olympic
Yeah.
champ or Tour de France champ. You must be something the way you're talking, because I thought this was a platform to encourage people to cycle,
Yeah.
not discourage them because, they're not out there riding,
And I think that's so important to understand. Anybody who's getting into it is, you might struggle riding 1 mile. Great. What's going to happen the next time you ride? You're going to go 1 mile plus.
Right.
And it could be 50 feet. Great. I don't care. You've then improved yourself. So you start out slow and work your way up. And then, like you said, sometimes riding a bike isn't about your workout, your train, your race. There's times after work, I hop on my bike and ride out from here. I can ride a couple miles and I can go fishing.
Right.
And I got this folding fishing pole, and I've done this over the past couple summers. Is I just grab that fishing pole, and I've got like maybe 1 or 2 baits on it. Nothing major. I just ride my bike to the little pond, throw some casts out,
And come back.
and enjoy the
That's right.
enjoy the water, and enjoy the nature, enjoy the sun. I'm out there maybe an hour, but I come back and I've ridden my bike 10 minutes tops.
Right.
Right. But that bike ride got me from a destination into relaxation and de-stress. And I got there because of the bike.
100%. I think one of the things, and I talk to people about cycling, and I'm new to the game, and I don't know if you've noticed, but it just seemed like cycling has, COVID happened, and cycling, everybody was buying a bike. We talked about that. It's hard to get a bike.
Yeah,
it was very hard, and now it just seems like it's kind of it kind of ebbed and flowed, and I don't know if people are buying bikes now that, you would think that they would be buying bikes now that everyone is out and about.
yeah,
But it just doesn't seem that way, right? But, I talk to people, if you want to get out and ride, not saying that you can't get out and enjoy a ride, but if you're going to ride serious, you need to get your bike fitted to you and make that ride comfortable. Now, and I said, I'm not saying you can't go to Walmart or wherever and just buy a bike, but you're not going to get out and ride serious rides if that if you're not comfortable. I said it's like, getting in your car before you go for a long ride.
You adjust the seat.
You adjust everything so
Adjust the
that you're
mirrors,
comfortable, right? I said it's the same thing with a bike. They're like, how can you ride a bike for 100 miles? I'm like, how do you drive your car for 100 miles, right? You get yourself mentally and physically prepared to drive 100 miles, right? It's the same thing, riding on a bike. I get myself mentally and physically prepared, right? I have my snacks, I have my water, I make sure I have money and my, my ID and everything. So I've already, planned out my different stops if I need water or whatever, right? And so that's a part of that planning, right?
Yeah.
Do I always go out to ride a century? No, but if it happens, then that's because I decide that it's going to happen.
Yeah. There's some people who, we host a ride, and I think the longest route's 25 miles. And some people have talked to me a few times and like, okay, I'm gonna sign up for this event, and I'm gonna sign up for the 50-mile ride. I think I can do that. I've been coming to your rides. I've been doing 25. I think I can do the 50. And I'm like, 50? Isn't that thing, doesn't it have a century? And they're like, yeah, I can't ride a century. I'm like, yeah, you can. It's just riding 25 miles 4 times.
That's right.
I was like, they got stops along the way. They got snacks. Just find your pace and stick with it. If you can ride 25 miles, you can ride 100. It's just, how long is it going to take you?
So, it's crazy. So I think the first time I rode a century, I think it was a solo century. It was by myself. And I think I rode out to the power plant out in Tanner, and I was riding around out there. And, once you're out there, you're out there.
You got to figure out a way to come home.
I got to come back home. So it was 50 miles out and 50 miles back. And, I found a couple different places to stop, to
refuel,
to get refuel, get some water, go to the bathroom. And it was the same thing. It's like, I don't know if I can ride 100 miles until I do it. Right. And then once I did it, now I know I can ride 100 miles, right? I know what I need to do to prepare myself to ride 100 miles, right? I need to make sure, I eat properly and hydrate. I can't hydrate the day of. I hydrate days in advance to make sure that, I'm prepared to ride for 100 miles.
Are you in shape this season? You ready for this season? Are you in shape?
I think I am. Even with the crazy weather we had in January, I probably rode, honestly, 1,000 miles on my trainer in January. So here's the crazy thing, right? So the team does a 30 for 30 in January.
Okay.
It starts on January 2nd, obviously, because people are enjoying the New Year's.
Right.
So from January 2nd to January 31st, 30 minutes a day for 30 days.
And this is with your club?
With my club.
And I need to join this. They're going to keep me motivated.
So it's on Strava, right?
Yeah.
And so the only way you can participate is that you do it on Strava, and it can't be a manual input.
Okay.
Right. So it has to be a Garmin, a watch, a trainer, or something. Right. And so
you got to have either a map or
something. Exactly. Right. So
Zwift.
There were some days like, so you can cycle, you can walk, run, weight train, whatever you do.
But it's got to be 30 minutes.
Got to be 30 minutes. Okay. So you can't skip a day. You skip a day, you're out. So it's 30 days straight. And I'll tell you, it was pretty motivating because you would go to the page and you would look on that day where, somebody did, 2 hours.
Right.
And I'm like, man, I need to do a little bit more than 2 hours.
Gotcha.
So it was crazy. One day I rode on my trainer, I rode a century on my trainer.
Oh.
And so it took me.
That's brutal, man.
It took me just less than 6 hours to ride this century on my trainer.
I'm like on a trainer an hour tops if I ever train on it's just.
But it was a bad weather day, right? It was a bad weather day. I think it had snowed on that Friday. Saturday came, that the roads were still covered in snow, and I was like, you know what? I'm here. I'm just gonna ride. I'm gonna ride this thing.
I need to get you to like motivate me on my days. I'll call you up and be like, hey, on the days that I'm like not feeling it, can you send me a text, an alarm?
Well, and I think that's what we do, right? That's what we do as a team, because we post our rides on our team page, right? So, most of us are on Strava, but then we do post on our team page. So we have a clubhouse, we have a public page and then a private page, and we post in there, and it encourage. That's the same thing. It's encouraging. If you haven't posted for a while, somebody might send you a text and ask you, "Are you good?" Like, so for me, business takes me out of town, and so they understand that, right? So when I was in Germany or when I was in Korea, I had my watch, so I was doing a lot of walking. So they saw that I wasn't cycling, but I was walking,
giving you some kudos for
exactly
getting out and doing.
Because I was still doing something, right? And I think that's the key is you're not going to always cycle, so you need to be doing something. That's why that 30 for 30, they put it out there. Whatever you do, just do it for 30 minutes.
What's that quote about? The best way to stay upright is just keep moving forward. So
that's us.
That's us, right? Yeah. Well, and being upright doesn't have to be upright on the bicycle. Just be standing upright.
100%.
The best way to keep living life is to keep moving.
One step at a time, right? So 1 mile at a time, one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
And I think honestly, I think that's what's really an important thing. To me, that's what this whole thing is about. That's what the whole cycling scene is about, really, is I like meeting people.
Yeah.
Sometimes my ride takes longer than it should.
Because you're talking?
Well, or I'm taking pictures, right? I'm looking for, it was crazy.
There goes Jon again, documenting this ride.
That's right. So, I'm kind of like the unofficial photographer because they know I'm going to shoot a video. They know I'm going to do a video or I'm going to take pictures. And my wife she called me when she first started tracking me on Strava. She's like, "You stopped, are you okay?" And then she'd be like, "Oh, never mind. I see water."
What's next for you? What do you got coming up?
Wow. So I think May I'm gonna try to do Bo's Bike Bama.
Oh yeah. This is, I think, his last year, right?
This is the last year, and I haven't done it. Work has taken me away for the last few years, and I don't think I have anything. I haven't registered yet.
You better register because I think the spots filling up.
They are. So I think when I go home, I'm gonna have to jump on this.
Might have to do it too.
And just that's just the thing. I want to do a lot of these rides. Just because. Right. But that's one that's gonna go away. So I want to do that one. I think that's what's next. There are a couple things out there. Major Taylor, Houston they're putting on a ride. There is a Juneteenth ride if I'm in town in Memphis. Memphis is right at 3 hours away.
That's another town that
a lot of history.
A lot of history, yeah.
A lot of history.
And when you it's kind of interesting on that one. And we're probably getting on a side subject here, but that one, it was the like plumbing and kind of disease around like bad water systems that kind of created, I guess, an escapism from that town. Yep. So yeah, that's I didn't know that about Memphis until probably about 10 years ago. I was like, really? It's amazing because it was supposed to be almost like the big place of the South that was up and coming.
And I think so one of my nephews lives in Memphis, and they're doing a lot of revitalization going on there, but there's still some issues there. Yeah. But they do put a ride on, so I follow some folks on Major Taylor, Memphis, and they do it. They ride it seems like every time I check in on them, they're riding a century. I think that's kind of one of the things that motivates me to get out there and try to get a couple centuries.
So you can stay up to date with all these other clubs, hang with them.
Well, and that's the thing. When I decide to get into these rides, I want to be able to have the base, right? Yeah. Not so much riding fast. I think if I had to ride fast, I could ride fast, or I could, I could hang. Maybe not at the,
Yeah, there's something about being able to hop on any kind of ride and go, yeah, I can do it, and not
right,
be destroyed at the end.
right.
If you ride fast and have that goal, that's one thing, you're going to be destroyed. But it's nice to be able to jump into a ride and go, yeah, I can do this.
We're gonna ride for 100 miles.
No problem. Let's do it.
At 15 or 17 or 18 or 19. Okay, let's do this.
A lot of times I ride fast on those because I just want to get off the bike as soon as
Right.
possible. It's like, golly.
Well, and that, I think for me, when I ride far, I plan a ride so I can see things.
Oh, that's awesome.
I like to, I like to see things, yeah, because
stop and record.
It kind of goes back to the point of that's how it was when I lived in Germany. You cannot see Germany from the Autobahn, right? You want to see Germany, you got to get on the back roads. That's where all the castles and the historical spots are at, off the beaten path. Same thing, when you ride, and if you want to see some stuff, you gotta get off of the beaten path, right? You gotta, take a couple lefts or a couple rights to see some things, and you'd be surprised what you might find out there. So I'm gonna take my phone out and I'm gonna take some pictures.
Document.
It's gonna happen.
Well, speaking of documenting and recording, I think we talked a lot.
Okay. Yeah,
I hope
we covered everything.
No, we
probably
didn't.
not.
There's so many more things I want to ask you, but I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely.
Because I'd love to have you back when we can make the Major Taylor Cycling Club here in Huntsville expand and grow.
Okay.
I'd love to figure out a way we can get you a bunch more members.
I think what we need to do is maybe one day sit down and so I'm going to call the president and we look at some dates.
Yeah.
So that way I don't want to clash with any rides that are already out there. And then we pick a nice time and then we can sit down and come up with some.
Here's what I found out. You pick a date, you plan it, doesn't matter what else, and you, like, if you do it and people think that it's going to be fun, they're going to come.
100%.
You just do it.
I agree.
And I got to say, if you're going to be there, you're going to have fun.
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
So,
well, if I plan it, I'm going to have to be there, right?
Well, of course. Yeah, but I'm saying more specifically, you're a fun guy to ride with. You're positive, you're happy, love it.
Hope so.
So maybe that's what the flyer needs to be. Come ride with Jon Martin. No? You don't like it?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely.
And
I appreciate you having me.
I've learned a lot of things too. It's stuff I need to go and research and learn more about. So I appreciate you being here and taking your time to do this.
We talked about a lot. I know we were all over the place, but I think that's how conversation should be, right? I think when it's really scripted, it kind of feels that way. But
yeah,
when you're conversating and you're just talking about life, there are just things that just come and,
Yeah, there's only like 2 or 3 questions that I ever plan to ask somebody. It's do you recall learning how to, ride a bike?
Right.
Do you have a favorite route that you like to go on? And a lot of times in this podcast, we just almost naturally cover those questions. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah, I love conversing. Like every time you've come on a ride or been here in the store, you've got a fun story to tell, and you're a positive force. And
I hope so.
Cycling community needs people like you, and especially anybody getting into the sport or the activity who's never done it. They need somebody who can encourage and say, I couldn't ride 10 miles, then I could ride 12, and then I could ride 20.
Right.
And now I'm always, I can go out and ride a century with you. Let's go.
So, that's, and the last thing I'll leave you is whenever, so you saw the picture of us going from Selma to Montgomery, right? One of my training partners, San, she had never ridden over. So right here in the middle, you see in the middle. So you got Mac, you got JT, me, JT, San, and then Mac. So she came up and she did the all you can eat with us.
Yeah.
And she was going to ride the metric. because she had never ridden over a metric.
Okay.
And so I think the ride was 72 miles or whatever it was, 72 or 77 miles. And we really tried to talk her into doing the century, but she had never ridden over a metric. And so we talked her into riding a metric, and we promised her that we would not leave her, right? And so, we've done, when we did the Selma to Montgomery, same thing, right? A lot of rollers. I think it was, 15 or 1,600 feet, which really not that much, but it could be, really trying for some people. So we stayed together, right? And to me, that's what it's about. If we go riding together, if we start together, we're gonna finish together.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to know about me when I ride with Mac. We start together, we're gonna finish together, and I think that that's the most important thing, is that we do that. So
yeah, I think that's huge and important. Anytime I've ever invited someone to ride with me and they're getting into it, I'm like, hey, let's go ride together. Like, oh no, you're way too fast. I'm like, no, man. When I ask you to ride with me, we're riding at your pace.
Right.
Whatever you want to ride.
100%.
And I'm sticking with you the whole time. And if we go 20 miles and we go 20 miles slow, dude, I'm on a fun 20-mile slow ride. And
That's
I'm
right.
going to enjoy every moment of it.
That's
so,
right.
yeah.
I mean, we could kill the Sunset Cruise every
heck
time
yeah.
we ride it. We could kill it, but at the end of the day, it's about, there's a wide collection of people riding different bikes and different different capabilities.
Yeah.
Right. And so we are riding at the slowest person's speed. We start off as a group. And if we break off and we do the little extra, cool, because we're gonna do the little extra. But if we come back as a group, that's what it's about, right? Because what I tell people about us is, when we ride, I want people to see us riding. I want people to see that we ride. It's like if I'm playing golf or whatever, right? I want people to see it. I'm not doing it to brag, but I'm just doing it to let you know that we do it, right? That we enjoy it just as much as anyone else does, because, these kind of sports they can be typecast, right? People can have this, and we talked about it earlier, they can have this mentality that, riding is only for, white guys or white gals, not for everybody else. Cycling is for everybody. If that's what you want to do, it's for everybody. And I think what happens sometimes is that, people get hurt by people in a group, and then they just kind of fade away, right? Instead of, being around people that are positive, people that enjoy it, people that are going to support them through, their whole development of cycling. People get out there and they'll take them on a ride, and they just drop them and just leave them out there in the country somewhere, right? And then next they'll find their way back, and then they'll never ride again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to me, that's the worst thing that you could ever do, for a cyclist, is especially someone that's new.
Yeah.
Now, if you tell me I'm gonna get dropped, if you tell me it's a drop ride,
yeah, there's a huge difference between a racer's group ride.
That's right.
And where it's like, all right, game on,
right?
And you're kind of playing a sport at that point, versus, hey, you're new to cycling. Let me introduce you to this. Let me let you know how fun it is and how you can do it. And
100%.
And I was once where you were, where I didn't know what the gears were and how to pedal right and how to keep my cadence up. Let me give you some encouragement along the way and
That's
show
right.
you. Yeah, that's awesome. We're gonna grow Major Taylor Club this year.
You know who we're gonna start with?
What's that?
We're gonna start with you.
All right, I'll be the first one to sign up.
That's right.
I'll do it right after this.
Absolutely.
John,
hey,
I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. It's been fun. I look forward to the next opportunity.
Yeah.
And I look forward to us putting together a ride right here at the shop. And I think that will give us an opportunity for some folks that come in from out of town to see, where I spend a lot of my cycling time at, and who takes care of me and my bikes, and who takes care of a lot of people in Huntsville and their bikes, because you care. because you're a part of the community and you care about the community. And I think that's what people need to know too.
Man, love it. Bikes are just fun.
Absolutely, 100%.
And the people on them, they're all nuts and crazy.
That's
and
right.
They're all fun.
I think that's me. I fall in that category too.
Well, Jon, I appreciate you. We're gonna sign this thing off and get out of here.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Brandon.
Appreciate you.